So today I ran into this article posted by the budojapan.com on this website, and the title is Reader's Voice, Japanese Never Say Gi. And of course this is meant in the context of Japanese martial arts, whether it be karate, judo, aikido, kendo. We can see a little bogu in the background and whatnot. So I thought that this would be really interesting. Let's read the article. Let's see. Ideally this is correct, but let's see if they present information in a cohesive and coherent way, if what they're saying right, and then I'll add one or two things. We begin reading. I've been living in Japan for a long time now and practicing karate. I often wondered why, when I said the word gi, referring to my karate uniform, I would be met with blank stares, and neither my sensei, Shindo sensei, nor other martial artists outside of my style of karate, Shorin-ryu, could understand the word gi, even though the word means uniform or wear in Japanese language. Yes, so this is absolutely correct. If you go to Japan and try to use gi on its own, yeah, they won't understand you. They won't have a clue what you mean. We continue. Most foreigners simply say gi. I made the mistake of saying gi numerous times and was always misunderstood until one day my sensei finally corrected me and he said in Japan we say karate gi or do-gi. Exactly. I researched even more and found out just saying the word gi would be misunderstood by martial artists in Japan. Most of the major martial arts come from Japan. Well, this is kind of a strange statement to make, but anyways. Therefore, if we practice martial arts anywhere in the world, we should say it in the correct form. Well, yeah, mostly. I mean, this doesn't matter. And I don't even know if it's true, to be honest. There are a lot of martial arts from India, a lot of martial arts from Japan, from China, what have you. Still, I wouldn't say that we have to say it because of this. No, we have to say it correctly because we want to make sure and have a successful communicative event when we speak with the Japanese. In Japan, the uniform for martial arts is usually referred to as dogi, and for karate, you can also say dogi or karate-gi or karate-dogi. Let's start with the Japanese meaning. Do means a way or a path. Gi means uniform or wear. Yes. So this concept, I wouldn't refer to it as gi on its own, and I'll tell you why in a second. I think this is what's confusing people. It's ki that means this. And then something happens, which has a specific nomenclature in linguistics, I'll discuss it, that turns the K into a G. But the original word on its own is ki. Let's see if he says that. So this concept, this word, dogi, can be used for all martial arts uniforms. Example, karate, kung fu, jiu-jitsu, judo. Yeah, okay, yeah, kung fu being Chinese, of course, they have their own words. But still, in the context of Japan, I suppose. So with karate, you can either say karate gi or dogi. Karate is karate and gi is wear. I know most people wonder, if karate gi means karate uniform or karate wear, why can't we just take the word gi and say uniform? One question mark would have been enough. I walked into the dojo many times and said I need to wash my gi, or my gi shrunk in the dryer, and everyone looked at me as if they didn't understand what I meant, because they probably didn't. I asked my wife and regular Japanese people, and they corrected me once again about the correct way to use this word. This is the odd characteristic of the Japanese language. You can't just take out the gi and use it on its own. Yes, there must be a word before or after this word gi for it to make sense to the Japanese people. Or you can, sort of, yeah, and then he gives examples, jiu-jitsu gi, aikido gi, kendo gi, etc. Yeah. So just say whatever martial arts you practice, just say the name followed by the word gi, and you will be understood in its correct form. Or you can always just say dogi and be understood as well. Okay, all the best in your martial arts journey. Cheers, Tim Johnston, Narita, Japan. Okay, so the overall information is correct. He's right in saying that you shouldn't say gi on its own, but now let's say why. So I think what's important to understand is the following. Transliteration is the process of transferring a word from the alphabet of one language to another. So when we write it in Ki, then you are applying transliteration, because that's not how they write it in their own language. We write ki, and even if we add after it kanji, we will get a lot of different options and choices, because Japanese, similarly to Chinese, has a lot of homophony. It has a lot of different words that sound the exact same, but they're written differently, and the kanji will provide semantic basis and clarity for what we actually mean. And you will notice that the Japanese sometimes even do that when they speak. They will write the kanji in the air. It's actually fascinating. So, ki. One possibility is tree. This will be the kanji, it's pronounced ki, and of course it's not what we are discussing today. Another possibility would be spirit or energy, inner mental energies. We can go really deep with this one. Air, it can mean air. This one can have a lot of different spirit, yeah, a lot of different translations, even as you can see, atmosphere, mind. It can mean a lot of things. It's not the one we are discussing here. Interestingly enough, it is the character that we find in Aikido, for example. The one that we are talking about is this. This character here, which on its own can be read ki, but generally you find it in compound words, such as the word kimono, where it's at the beginning. Okay, let me show you that. So you can see it here, kimono, and that's at the beginning of a word, and it does not turn into a G. It's still pronounced as in its original sound, which is ki. Literally, mono means object or item. So item to wear, something you wear. That's what kimono literally means, although of course that's the literal translation. Contextually, in our day and age, kimono has a very specific meaning that we are all familiar with in Japanese. But it can also be used as a verb, and in that case, removing for a moment the na here, which is the way you ask someone, you tell someone not to do, so it's a negative imperative. Remove the na for a moment. Just this is read kiru, and it means to wear. So when you wear something, you put clothes on, it's kiru. When you take this and you write, for instance, dogi, here it is, then you're basically putting it after. If you see it's on the second side, you're creating a compound word, just like we did with kimono. But in this case, the key part is after the first kanji, which in this situation would be do. On its own can be read michi, and it means a way. It can mean a street, but also like a figurative, and usually this is the figurative sense. It's the same do that you put after certain martial arts. So judo, karate do. So karate do would be the way of the empty hand. Kara is empty, and te, like karaoke, an empty orchestra. Oke meaning orchestra. So karaoke, empty orchestra, karate, these are te, empty hands. At least in the current spelling, there is an more ancient spelling, but for now let's discuss that. In this case, so karate do, the way of the empty hands, kendo, the way of the ken, in the case the sword. Now, why do we not say do ki? Why does this become gi? This is due to a linguistic phenomenon that in English is called sequential voicing, and usually in Japanese is referred to as rendaku. And it refers to a process where the initial voiceless consonant of the second element in a compound word becomes voiced, or it's changed into its voiced counterpart. So k will become a g, like in this case, ki becomes gi, ku becomes gu, ta becomes da, sa becomes za, he becomes bi, like in the word hitobito. Now, this is an essential element in Japanese phonology, but it should be considered as a modification of an original sound. The reasons behind it, I probably would need to make a dedicated video, but it is important to see it as a modification, because this way you will see why gi on itself, on its own, doesn't mean anything to the Japanese, because the original sound is indeed ki. However, when put into a compound and selected into the second section or the latter part of the compound, the ki is now be modified into a gi. But on its own, it is not a gi, and it would be difficult to recognize in that situation if you pronounce it that way in isolation. An interesting way to look at this from an English or an Anglophone perspective is to look at the word. Let me show you. This is going to get interesting. Haha. This word. Now, normally you would read this cupboard. Cupboard. In fact, cupboard, right? No one in his right mind who is a native speaker would read it cupboard, okay? Now, separately, independently, yes, this is read cup and this is read board. But because they're put together, now the pronunciation is modified and it becomes cupboard or cupboard. I mean, it depends on your accent. There will be variations, but no one says cup board. What is basically happening from a Japanese perspective, when you say gi in isolation, it would be as if I'm talking about a board of wood, a wooden board. Like, let's board up that window, but I pronounce it bed, like it would in its compound form. And I would tell you, I really need to buy a couple of beds. You would be like, couple of what? Beds. Oh, you mean boards? It's the same thing. Yes. Here, you are indeed, as a native speaker, pronouncing it, but cupboard, but not in isolation. That is, it's a very similar scenario. Interestingly, something like that could happen even in names like Johnson, rather than John's son, but that's my son. It's not my son. If I say that's my son, it sounds weird. and it might not be recognizable. So in other words, the mistake that people make, including this karate practitioner in Japan, is that they were thinking of the word as gi, because you hear judo gi and you're thinking, well, judo, I understand, the martial arts, the way of softness, you could translate it, but whatever. Judo, we know what that is. And then, oh, they're adding gi. What does that gi mean? And they tell you correctly, gi is like the uniform, is the clothes that you're wearing, because yes, it comes from the word ki, to wear, but it comes from it. And the mistake for someone who's not a Japanese speaker is to think, okay, so judo means the martial art, gi is the clothing, so hey, I need to go buy a new gi. No, because it's a dogi. In that point, you have to put it into a new compound, because it's as if the Japanese are saying judogi. So dogi is the thing that you extrapolate from it rather than gi on its own. And another way to look at it, to really nail it, is to think about the word sportswear in English, or ski wear. If you remove ski from the sentence, and if you remove sport from the sentence, and you just say, I need to put on my wear, it doesn't make sense anymore. But I need to put on my sportswear. I mean, that sounds kind of my ski wear, I guess. You understand what I'm talking about. Now, there are a few other words that we can discuss. Uagi is just the top, for example, because ua from ue is a kanji that means up or above, or the upper part or something, so that usually uagi refers just to the jacket. Zubon would be just the trousers. Training clothes, you could also say keikogi, but I haven't heard many Japanese use that. Most of the times they just say the name of the martial art and add gi at the end, or just say dogi. I would suggest to stick to that. Or you can say karate gi. It would be the least misunderstandable, if you will. Gi on its own, not really a thing. All right, but I hope that this was interesting. Thank you very much for watching and joining Metatron's Academy. Bye.